Greetings and welcome to this sneak peek into ICWA's panel discussion on civilizational state and the remaking of global order, India's strategic identity in global politics. I'm Avni Sablok, Research Associate and Social Media Coordinator at the Council. It is my pleasure to welcome and interact with the chair of the panel discussion, Sri Raghavendra Singh, Senior Fellow, Vivekanand International Foundation and former Secretary, Culture and Textile, Government of India. Welcome to the Council, sir.
Thank you.
So, as someone who has led India's key organization of history and heritage, how do you see India's civilizational heritage, thought, and memory is shaping its identity of a civilizational state today? And what measures can be deployed to instrumentalize this legacy in foreign policy making amidst the geopolitical turmoil today?
Thank you, Amni. It's always a pleasure to come to ICWA. We are seeing, with regard to, say, United States, currently, is a pushback. And that pushback is coming because India as a country is emerging in the way it should emerge. Independent, robust, vibrant, ready to question. We, as a country, have managed to sort of come out and assert ourselves in the world arena. That's one thing. But have we been able to utilize the concept of India as a civilizational state in the way we should have? Well, there's a question mark on that. Why do I say there's a question mark on that? Have we used it as a strategic tool? How far have we been able to utilize civilization as a strategic doctrine in our own neighborhood? To finally sum it up, I think India should use civilizational aspects of its culture as a strategic doctrine, and how far it can make a dent in the emerging global order and how successfully it can make a dent in the emerging global order currently in this chaotic geopolitical world that we are seeing today. How effective we are, that is where our success would lie.
Thank you for your perspective, sir. Thank you. We have with us Dr. Shantanu Chakrabarti, Department of History, University of Calcutta. Welcome to the Council, sir.
Thank you.
So, your recent work on nation branding demonstrates that nations market their identities in ways that differ from the Western models. Amid the continuous geopolitical turmoil, how can India leverage its country branding to promote its world image as a civilizational state? And how can India's civilizational status serve as an asset for the conduct of its diplomacy and strengthening international relations?
Nation branding, as you see, is not really a very new term. Every nation tries to project itself. How you do it, what happened was around 1980s, 90s, there were scholars from management like Simon Anholt and others who introduced this concept that just like in management studies, you could produce and then advertise a product. Nation states, similar things could be done about nation states. Better packaging a nation, how to package a nation state like that. Though Simon Anholt, of course, later on has changed his views. He believes that nation state is not exactly like a product in the market. Ultimately, how you project or how nation states must project themselves depend upon their historicity, particular trajectory, their own socio-cultural developments, etc. Herein, we could link up this concept. What I tried to do in that book was whether you could link it up with this another concept which is becoming popular these days, which is that of civilizational state. Now, if you look at Western academics, they usually take a very critical note of the term, that civilization state is something which is opposed to the global order. It attempts to destroy the global liberal order. But, one could say very briefly that one, civilization states are of different types. The manner in which China projects itself as a civilization state is not something as to how India will project itself as a civilization state. Indian projection has been very pluralist, and more importantly, India, acknowledges differences. That has been the Indian tradition, and Indian tradition is to balance out each other. Look at our historical tradition in trying to produce a sort of composite view, assimilating different point of views. I think, in terms of that projection, it is the need of the hour. In a way, order and disorder could be linked up together, and the way in which it could be linked up together is through continuous negotiations and attempts to assimilate divergent views. And I think the Indian tradition of civilization state has a lesson for the world in turmoil in this connection.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for an insightful perspective. Our viewers are definitely going to benefit from it. Thank you. We have with us Professor Hindol Sen Gupta, Jindal School of International Affairs and Director, Jindal India Institute, OP Jindal Global University. Welcome to the Council, sir.
Thank you so much.
So, you've written extensively about India's legacy and its role in the world politics. How can India leverage its civilizational identity, not just as history, but as a living force to situate itself as a thought leader and rule maker in today's multipolar world? And how can India's civilizational status serve as an asset for the conduct of its diplomacy and strengthening international relations?
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me, and thank you for the question. So, a civilizational state is really a state which derives its sense of nationhood from a long history and culture, rather than just the Westphalian model of nationhood, which is via a constitution or a similar document, right? And India specifically has a unbroken history. China was the first country that began to call itself a civilizational state, but India has called itself a civilization for a much longer period of time. And India is really the only true civilizational state in the world, because remember, India has an unbroken history. The Chinese don't have an unbroken history because their history was interrupted by the Cultural Revolution, by all kinds of things, essentially. Mao's Great Leap Forward, which was really an effort to wipe out all of Chinese history and create a new China. India, however, in spite of all the invasions it faced and colonialism, retained among its society an unbroken sense of history. And that's what India's civilizational state is built upon. That's the foundation. Now, I think India has two things particularly to offer to the world. India seeks power not to usurp power from others, but India seeks power to, in a sense, only protect its own sovereignty and also project peace in the world. This is a very important distinction. So therefore, India seeks to attain power, no doubt, but that power it seeks is fundamentally for its own sovereignty. This is a very big difference. I don't think there is no other power or even aspirational power that has this kind of legacy. The other thing that's important for India is that India really, Indian society and Indian civilization is fundamentally built on this idea of balance, right? That all ideologies could coexist, but they have to coexist in balance. Whenever there are any extremes, right? And therefore, Indian society and Indian ideology has always been uncomfortable with extremes of capitalism, extremes of communism. Anything extreme is antithetical to the Indian way, or occupy or invade another territory. These are two very important things to remember when we talk about India as a civilizational state.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for such a
Thank you
detailed
so much.
perspective. Thank you. We have with us Shri Kanchan Gupta, veteran journalist and senior advisor, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Government of India. Welcome to the Council, sir.
Thank you.
So, how can India's civilizational ethos be foregrounded on the world stage? how can it be disseminated in a language and a manner that will be easily understood and comprehended by foreign minds? And how can we ensure that only the best is put out? Your take, sir.
So, the very first thing we have to do is that we have to create an internal consciousness. We have to make our people conscious about it. We have to make our bureaucracy conscious about it. So here we have to make it very clear that we are not engaging the world from a position of disadvantage or a position of weakness, or that we are seeking global endorsement for who we are, what are we, and where do we come from. So instead of that, we have to project ourselves with a certain degree of confidence that yes, we are Indians, we are Bharatiyas, and this is what we stand for, and this is how we would like to engage with you, not from a position of weakness or not as someone who is a supplicant in your darbar. We would like to engage with you as equals. And of course, I mean, there will be spaces where you will have something to offer to us, and there are spaces where we have something to offer to you. Now, I will give you a very small example. We talk about US tech, which is possibly the biggest tech in the world. But US tech has been enabled, or the creation of US tech has happened because of Indian minds. Number two, you have to get around to figuring out how to deal with foreign relations and foreign policy in the new post-pandemic global order. A lot has changed. The pandemic has forced various things to change irreversibly. And in this new global order, you have a big role to play. But you have to also internalize that relations, this point onwards, will be more transactional. Example, this whole ballyhoo about India buying oil from Russia. Data shows that India is not the only country buying oil from Russia. And the way India has stood up, since you buy oil from Russia, you are as guilty as Russia. The Ukraine war is an European war. And as the foreign minister has repeatedly pointed out from public platforms in Europe and in America, that it is for Europe to figure out how to deal with its own war. When stuff happens in this part of the world, Europe doesn't drop everything that it is doing and rush to solve my problems. It doesn't. And so it should not expect me to rush to Europe's aid to deal with a problem that is essentially European in nature. So these distinctions, I think they are now gradually filtering in. There is a new edge to India's foreign policy making, and there is a new edge to our diplomatic responses. And I think we'll see further evolution in the coming days, coming months, coming years.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your perspective. Thank you. We have with us Dr. Arshad. He's a research fellow at the Indian Council of World Affairs, and his area of research focuses on international relations and West Asia studies. Dr. Arshad, how does the narrative of civilizational states straddle between idealism and realism? And will this narrative lead to positive outcomes for the governance of international relations? Your take.
Thank you, Avni, for your question. The narrative of civilizational states straddles between idealism and realism in meaningful ways. On the side of idealism, civilizational states claim legitimacy not only from Westphalian system of sovereignty, but also from their ancient traditions, cultural continuity, and moral authority. They present themselves as living civilizations, rooted in thousands of years of history, heritage, and memory. While Western notion of idealism started after the First World War, but India's history of idealism goes back to centuries. Its global outlook often invokes Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world as one family. This idealism can also be traced back to concepts like Ramrajya in ancient thought, further revived by Mahatma Gandhi during our freedom struggle. Similarly, Emperor Ashoka's Dhamma Niti, after the Kaling War, shifted from conquest by force to the conquest by righteousness. These examples show how civilizational states draw upon ethical and philosophical traditions to frame its international conduct. Yet, the same narratives also carries a strong element of realism. Civilizational states use their histories and memories as tools of statecraft. The question is, will this lead to positive outcomes for the global governance? The answer is conditional. If civilizational thinking is used inclusively, it can enrich pluralism in international relations. It can create space for diverse philosophies and pathways to foster deeper intercultural dialogue. And also, it can push global institutions to become more representative. However, if civilizational narratives are framed narrowly or exclusively, they may fuel rivalry rather than cooperation. In conclusion, the civilization state is both an opportunity and a challenge. Its promise lies in blending ideals of ethical leadership with the realities of power politics. If pursued with openness and inclusivity, it can strengthen global governance and create a more plural world order. But if reduced to exclusionary rhetoric, it risks deepening fragmentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your perspective. Thank you for joining us. Do visit our YouTube channel to watch the full panel discussion. Thank you.